New Year, New Me. By Anna von Black. I wish I were a vampire, Cassie muttered under her breath, staring at the gym's glass doors. The midnight moon cast a ghostly glow over the parking lot, and for a moment, her reflection in the glass seemed sharper, more otherworldly, than it should have been. She dismissed the eerie thought and pushed the door open, stepping into the emptiness of the gym. The app had promised the lowest traffic at this hour, and she needed solitude. Her New Year's resolution to stick to the gym felt like her last chance to salvage the fragments of her life. Work was a relentless grind, her social life a string of disappointments, and anger simmered within her, unshakable. Midnight workouts felt like the only escape. The gym was eerily quiet, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. As she set her bag down, she noticed someone moving between the machines, a man in a white tank top, lean and purposeful. He seemed to check each machine with the precision of a personal trainer, though his presence at this hour felt out of place. Cassie shrugged and began her routine, the rhythmic clank of weights filling the silence. She was mid-rep when he approached, his shadow stretching across the bench. "Need a spot?" His voice was low and smooth, with an undertone that made her heart skip. "No, thank you," she said, glancing up. His sharp features were framed by dark eyes that seemed to pierce through her. He smirked. "I work the graveyard shift here. Nothing else to do. Happy to help, for free. Our little secret." Over the weeks, their midnight encounters became routine. He pushed her harder than she'd ever pushed herself, guiding her through complex exercises and teaching her how to perfect her form. His humor was dry, his compliment subtle but addictive. "You'll regret it tomorrow if you skip those deadlifts," he'd text her when she tried to flake. "Bossy much," she'd reply, smirking at her phone. "You love it," he'd shoot back, and though she'd never admit it aloud, she did. At the gym, their banter continued, teasing, veiled compliments, and stolen glances that made her pulse quicken. He'd lingered just a moment too long when adjusting her form, and she found herself wondering what it would feel like if his hand trailed just a little further. But reality crept in. Work deadlines piled up, social obligations called, and soon she was skipping their sessions more often than not. One Friday night, Cassie joined her friends at a trendy restaurant, indulging in cocktails and desserts. She laughed along, though her mind drifted back to the gym. A part of her missed those quiet midnight hours, the strange connection she'd formed with him. "Cassie?" Becca nudged her, breaking her reverie. Her head snapped up just as he walked through the door. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on her with laser focus. A grin tugged at his lips as he waved, and her stomach flipped. "Who is that?" Becca whispered, her tone dripping with intrigue. Before Cassie could answer, he slid up to their table. "Hey," he said casually, his presence commanding the table's attention. "This is, Cassie stammered. "I'm her gym buddy," he interjected smoothly, flashing a smile that made Becca blush. He slid into the booth beside Cassie, his arm brushing hers, and suddenly the group dynamic shifted. Her friends were enamored, laughing at his jokes and hanging on his every word. Cassie, meanwhile, felt herself shrinking. He was magnetic, effortlessly charming, and the center of attention in a way she could never be. Cassie woke the next morning with a pounding headache, the events of the night before a hazy blur. She winced as she sat up, clutching her temples. The living room was empty, save for a few empty wine glasses and a blanket crumpled on the couch. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Thanks for the key. I'll bring my stuff by tonight." Cassie stared at the message, her heart racing. The key? She didn't remember giving him one. Did she agree to let him move in? When he arrived that evening, he carried only a single duffel bag. "Most of my stuff's in storage," he explained. "Thought we'd try this out before making it permanent." He installed a lock on his bedroom door, explaining it was to ensure uninterrupted sleep during the day. At first, his presence was comforting. He was tidy, helpful, and always seemed to know when she needed space. But after a week, things began to change. Cassie grew weaker, her energy sapped. She chalked it up to the flu, but no amount of rest helped. He nursed her back to health with soups and a bitter tea that he insisted she drink. The tea became a nightly ritual, its strange, earthy flavor oddly addictive. When her strength returned, it was unlike anything she'd felt before. She lifted heavier at the gym, ran faster, and seemed to recover instantly. But mornings became harder. She slept through alarms, her days slipping away in a haze. One afternoon, she woke to a sharp pain in her stomach. Crawling to the bathroom, she flicked on the light and gasped. Her reflection stared back, but her eyes, they weren't hers. They glowed faintly, an unnatural amber hue. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. The bathroom door creaked open behind her. "It's happening," he said, his voice soft yet commanding. "What did you do to me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You wished for this," he replied, stepping closer. His movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, as if he floated rather than walked. Cassie stumbled backward, her legs giving out beneath her. He caught her effortlessly, pulling her close. His scent was intoxicating, a mix of earth and something darker, forbidden. "You've always wanted to feel alive," he murmured, his lips brushing her temple. "This is what alive feels like." Her breath hitched as his dark eyes locked onto hers, pulling her into a dreamlike trance. She felt the ache in her stomach twist into something else, hunger, primal and all-consuming. Her instincts took over, and before she could think, her lips grazed the curve of his neck. "Do it," he whispered, his voice a velvet command. Her teeth sank into his flesh, and the taste of him was electric, a surge of power and ecstasy that made the world dissolve into shadow and light. He held her tightly as the sensation overwhelmed her, his hand steady against her trembling body. When she finally pulled away, her vision was sharper, her senses heightened. The room felt both infinite and intimate, the air alive with an energy she'd never known. He smiled, his lips stained with her blood where she'd bitten him. "Welcome to the night, Cassie." And for the first time in her life, she felt free.